There are moments in life that don't explode loudly. They don't come with screaming or broken glass. They arrive quietly, softly, and they break you from the inside. The day my husband asked for a paternity test was one of those moments. But to understand how we got there, you have to understand who we used to be. My name is Amelia. For 8 years, I believed I had a stable marriage, not passionate like in movies, not dramatic, just steady. My husband Daniel was practical, logical, calm. He worked as a financial analyst. He believed in numbers, in certainty, in proof. I believed in trust. We met at university, fell in love slowly, married after graduation, built a small life in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt safe, and I valued safety. For years, we talked about having a baby. Daniel said he wanted to wait until we were financially stable enough. I respected that. When I finally got pregnant, 8 years into our marriage, I cried in the bathroom holding that positive test. Not because I was scared, but because I felt chosen by life. I remember walking into the living room, holding the small plastic stick in my trembling hand. "Daniel," I whispered. He looked up from his laptop. "What is it?" I handed it to him. He stared at it for a long time. Then his eyes softened. "You're pregnant?" I nodded. For a moment, just a moment, he smiled the way he used to when we were younger. He stood up and hugged me. "We're going to be parents." And I believed we were entering the happiest chapter of our lives. Pregnancy changed me, not just physically, emotionally. I felt protective, tender, fierce. Daniel was supportive at first. He attended doctor visits, helped assemble the crib, chose the stroller carefully like it was an investment plan. But around the 6th month, something shifted. It was subtle. He started coming home later, checking his phone more often, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. One evening, while we were eating dinner, he asked casually, "Are you sure about the conception date?" I laughed lightly. "What do you mean?" "I was just thinking about the timeline." My stomach tightened. "We were trying, Daniel." "I know." He didn't say more, but the air felt different after that. My mother-in-law, Patricia, had never liked me. She was polite, but distant. She believed Daniel deserved someone more ambitious. When she visited during my pregnancy, she would stare at my belly in silence. Once, she said, "You know, genetics are very interesting." I didn't understand what she meant, not then. The day our son was born was the most painful and beautiful day of my life. 20 hours of labor, sweat, tears, fear, and then a cry. They placed him on my chest, small, warm, perfect. Daniel stood beside the hospital bed staring at him. "He has dark hair," Patricia commented when she visited. "Daniel has light brown hair. I have dark hair, but suddenly, it became a topic. "He doesn't look like Daniel," she continued quietly. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Daniel didn't defend me. He didn't say, "He looks like his mother." He just stared, observing, analyzing, as if my newborn son was a spreadsheet. The weeks after childbirth were exhausting. Sleepless nights, hormonal waves, breastfeeding pain. I was vulnerable. And that's when Daniel chose to ask. It was 2:17 a.m. Our son was finally asleep in his bassinet. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, rocking gently, trying not to cry from exhaustion. Daniel stood near the window. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "I think we should do a paternity test." The words didn't register at first. "What?" "A DNA test." I stared at him. "Why would we do that?" He exhaled slowly. "It's just for peace of mind." Peace of mind. I laughed, a broken, hollow sound. You think I cheated on you? I didn't say that. But that's what you're implying. He rubbed his forehead. Mom just thinks. There it was. Your mother thinks. So this isn't your doubt, I whispered. It's hers. It's logical, he insisted. The timeline was close to that business trip you took. The room felt smaller. That was a 2-day conference, I said slowly, with 12 women and 3 elderly professors. I'm just asking for proof. Proof after 8 years of loyalty, after childbirth, after building a life together. He wanted proof. I looked at our sleeping baby, so small, so innocent, and I realized something. This wasn't about DNA. This was about trust. And once trust is questioned, it doesn't return unchanged. I stood up slowly. Okay, I said calmly. We'll do the test. Relief crossed his face. He thought compliance meant forgiveness. He was wrong. The next morning, I called a lawyer, not because I knew the result yet, but because I knew something deeper had already broken. You don't accuse your wife of infidelity days after she gives birth and expect everything to stay the same. That kind of humiliation doesn't disappear. It transforms. And I was transforming. Quietly. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and quiet judgment. Daniel insisted on coming with me. Of course he did. He wanted to handle it together. But we weren't together anymore. Not really. We sat in the waiting room with our newborn son sleeping in his carrier between us. Daniel kept checking his watch. I kept watching our baby breathe. The nurse called our name. The DNA swab was simple. Too simple for something that carried the weight of a marriage. They swabbed Daniel's cheek, then mine, then our son's tiny mouth. He stirred slightly, but didn't cry. I almost did, not because I doubted the result, but because of what this moment represented. A husband asking for proof that his wife didn't betray him. A grandmother whispering suspicion into her son's ear. A newborn baby being treated like evidence. When we walked out, Daniel said quietly, "It's just a precaution." I didn't respond, because I had already contacted a lawyer. The results would take 7 days. 7 days of silence. 7 days of Daniel trying to act normal. 7 days of Patricia calling constantly. "How are you feeling?" she would ask. Not me, the situation. Daniel grew restless. He avoided eye contact. But sometimes, late at night, I would catch him watching our son, studying his face, searching for himself. It was cruel. Not because he doubted the DNA, but because he doubted me. And that doubt doesn't disappear with paperwork. On the 6th day, my lawyer called. The divorce documents were ready. I didn't hesitate. I signed them, not angrily, not dramatically, calmly, because once someone questions your integrity at your most vulnerable moment, something fundamental shifts. The DNA results came the next morning. Daniel was at work when the email arrived. I opened it alone. My hands were steady. Probability of paternity, 99.9999%. Of course, there was never a question. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I forwarded it to Daniel, with no message, just the attachment. He called within minutes. "It's confirmed," he said, almost breathless. "I know. I told you it was just for peace of mind." I closed my eyes. "No," I said quietly. "It was for mistrust." Silence. "I'm coming home," he said quickly. When he walked through the door, he looked relieved. Victorious, almost. "As I said," he began, "there was nothing to worry about." I was sitting at the dining table. 2 envelopes rested in front of me, one empty, one sealed. "Yes," I said calmly. There wasn't. He frowned slightly. What's that? I slid the sealed envelope toward him. He opened it. His face changed. What is this? Divorce papers? The room went very still. You're joking. No. His relief dissolved into confusion. Amelia, the test proved everything is fine. No? I corrected gently. It proved the baby is yours. His jaw tightened. So, what's the problem? I almost smiled at that. You really don't see it. The problem, I said quietly, is that you needed a laboratory to trust your wife. He ran a hand through his hair. I was under pressure. My mom just had doubts. And you chose her doubts over my loyalty. It was logical. I stood up. Marriage isn't a spreadsheet, Daniel. He stared at me like I was being unreasonable. You're destroying our family over a test. No, I said softly. You destroyed it the night you asked. He didn't sign immediately, of course not. He tried reasoning, begging, explaining. I was just scared. First-time father nerves. You know I love you. But love without trust is just fear dressed nicely, and I refuse to raise a child in a home where his mother's character was negotiable. Patricia arrived uninvited 2 days later. I heard about the results, she said sharply. Congratulations. I held our son closer. Thank you. She glanced at the documents on the table. You're being dramatic. I looked at her calmly. No, I'm being clear. Daniel was protecting himself. From what? I asked gently. His faithful wife? She scoffed. You're ruining his life. No, I said. I'm protecting mine. She didn't expect that. People like her expect tears, begging, weakness, not boundaries. Daniel eventually signed. Not because he agreed, but because he realized I was serious. The process moved quickly. We sold the house. I kept primary custody. He paid support. The night I moved into my small apartment with my son, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes. It was quiet, but not heavy, peaceful. I looked at my baby sleeping beside me and whispered, "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in weeks, I felt strong, not broken, not humiliated, strong. Daniel tried a few more times. Texts, calls. I made a mistake. I was stupid. I should have trusted you. But apologies don't erase humiliation. They only prove awareness came too late. 6 months later, I made a decision. If I was going to raise a child alone, I needed independence. I had always loved children. So I enrolled in early childhood certification classes. Then I started something small, very small, a home daycare. 3 children at first, then 5, then 8. Parents trusted me because I was patient, warm, structured. Within 2 years, I opened a licensed childcare center, then another. I built something solid, stable, rooted in care, the very thing my marriage lacked. 3 years passed. One afternoon, Daniel walked into my daycare center. He looked older, less certain. He watched children playing, watched me laughing with them. You built all this? He asked quietly. Yes. He swallowed. I was wrong. I know. I destroyed everything. I shook my head gently. No, you destroyed your place in it. His eyes filled with regret. I should have trusted you. Yes, I said calmly. You should have. He looked at our son across the room. He looks just like me. I smiled softly. He looks like himself. And that was the difference. Years have a quiet way of reshaping people. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. By the time 5 years had passed, my life no longer resembled the one I had cried over in that hospital room. The daycare had grown into a full early learning center, then 2 centers, then 3. Parents recommended us. Teachers respected us. Children ran into my arms every morning with sticky hands and big smiles. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And the irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who had once been asked to prove her loyalty was now trusted daily with dozens of children. Trust. The very thing Daniel thought needed laboratory confirmation. Our son, Noah, was 5 now. Curious, bright, with Daniel's eyes and my stubbornness. Daniel saw him regularly. Supervised visits at first, then unsupervised once the court was satisfied. He was a good father, careful, gentle, but distant. Not because he didn't love Noah, but because he knew something fragile had already been broken. One afternoon after dropping Noah back home, Daniel lingered at the door. "You've done well," he said quietly, glancing around my home. It was warm, organized, peaceful. "Yes," I replied simply. He hesitated. "Do you ever think about us?" There it was, the question that always arrives too late. I looked at him calmly. "I think about what we were and what we weren't. And I don't regret leaving." That hurt him. I saw it in his jaw. "I was afraid," he said. "Afraid of what?" "Of being fooled, of being the man everyone laughs at." I studied him for a moment. "You were more afraid of embarrassment than of hurting your wife." He didn't deny it. I didn't realize what I was doing. He whispered. "That's the problem," I said gently. "You didn't." Time moved on, and so did I. I wasn't interested in dating for a long time, not because I didn't believe in love, but because I had learned something important. Peace is addictive, and I wasn't willing to trade it for uncertainty again. When I eventually met someone, it happened naturally, at a licensing seminar for early childhood educators. His name was Marcus. He didn't try to impress me. He didn't ask about my past immediately. He simply listened. When I eventually told him the story, he didn't laugh. He didn't question. He didn't say, "I would never." He said something better. "I'm sorry someone made you feel that small." And that sentence meant more than promises ever could. Because Daniel's question hadn't just doubted my fidelity, it had made me feel small, suspicious, interrogated. And no woman deserves that in the days after giving birth. One evening, nearly 7 years after the divorce, Daniel asked to speak privately. We met at a quiet cafe after Noah's school recital. He looked tired, not older, just worn. "I still think about that night," he said. "The night I asked." "I know." "I can't believe I did that to you." He rubbed his hands together nervously. "I lost my wife because I couldn't ignore my mother." "You lost your wife because you didn't protect her," I corrected gently. He looked at me, and for the first time, I think he truly understood. Marriage isn't just love, it's protection. It's choosing your partner publicly and privately, especially when doubt enters the room. He hadn't chosen me. He had chosen suspicion. "I thought the test would fix everything," he admitted. "It fixed nothing." He nodded slowly. "I see that now." There was no anger in my voice, no bitterness, just clarity. "I forgive you," I said softly. His eyes lifted. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." He swallowed. "I know. And that's okay," I continued, "because we both ended up where we needed to be." He looked confused. "You built something incredible," I said. "And I built something incredible. We just weren't meant to build it together." That was the truth. Not dramatic, not cruel, just true. That night, I sat on my balcony after putting Noah to bed. The city lights flickered softly in the distance. Marcus had texted earlier asking if I wanted to join him for dinner tomorrow. Simple, calm, steady. I thought about the journey, the hospital room, the accusation, the DNA test, the divorce papers, the empty apartment, the first child enrolled in my daycare, the first ribbon-cutting ceremony, the first time Noah called me strong. Pain had carved me, but it had also clarified me. I learned something powerful through that humiliation. When someone asks you to prove your worth in a relationship, believe them the first time, because trust is not something you beg for. It's something you protect. Daniel thought he needed proof that I was faithful. What he really needed was courage. And when courage fails, love follows. Today, when I look at Noah, I don't feel sadness about the past. I feel gratitude, because his birth, even surrounded by doubt, was the beginning of my awakening. The paternity test didn't destroy my life. It revealed who I was married to. And sometimes revelation is the greatest gift of all. My husband asked for a paternity test. So I gave him divorce papers. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted revenge, but because I understood something he didn't. Trust, once broken at your most vulnerable moment, doesn't grow back the same, and I deserved better. Now my life is calm, full, built on respect, not suspicion. And if you're listening to this story, and someone has ever made you feel like you needed to prove your loyalty, let me tell you this. The right person will never require evidence to believe in your character. They will protect it every single time. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Have you ever chosen dignity over staying? Would you have stayed or walked away? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful life stories every week. There are many more journeys of strength, betrayal, and rebirth waiting for you here. Thank you for listening. With love and respect, I'll see you in the next story.